everyone, I'm your host, Kira Lai, and welcome to another episode of the Afterthought podcast. In today's episode, I'll be interviewing Zhang Chen Ling, the founder of VCleanse, a brand that introduced cold-pressed green juices to China. Currently based in New York and Shanghai, Chen Ling studied applied math at Harvard University and then worked at Morgan Stanley before founding VCleanse in 2013. Join me today for an interview with Chen Ling, where we cover her life before and during college, the struggles she faced during her entrepreneurship journey, and her partnership with athleisure brand Lululemon. Introduce yourself briefly.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chen Ling. Today, I'm so glad to be here as a guest of Kira.
Okay, so let's begin. Tell us a bit about yourself.
So I grew up in Shanghai. So I finished high school in Shanghai, and then I was very lucky. I got a full scholarship to go to Harvard, and then I studied applied math at Harvard. Afterwards, I went to Wall Street, worked at Morgan Stanley, also worked in private equity. And then at private equity, I met a lot of entrepreneurs. I thought they were so interesting. They created, they basically created livelihood for their employees. They created new things. And it was so interesting. So I want to be an entrepreneur myself. I want to create. I want to change people's lives. And I want to provide also for other people. So 14 years ago, I decided to quit finance, and I came back to Shanghai because I'm from Shanghai. And at the time in New York, I encountered a bottle of green juice. I still remember I started VCleanse with this brand that was really popular at the time, and I really loved them. So I was like, wow, it really changed my diet, my lifestyle, and I would love for people in China to experience this too. So I decided to come back to Shanghai and then started VCleanse. V stands for, actually at the time, stands for Veritas. The Harvard thing. And then because my co-founder at the time, she also went to Harvard undergrad and Harvard Law. We were just like, oh, we should call it Veritas. But then we're like, oh, we'll be sued by Harvard. and then we said, how about verite? Because it's a Latin word and it's so hard to pronounce. And then we're just like, forget it, just V. And then V stands for a lot of good meanings: vitality, vivid, vivacious, Valentine. So we're just like, oh, why don't we do that? So that's the origin of the name. We started the business in the 30 square meter store in Shanghai. Wow. Today, that courtyard is still there. It's for folks in Shanghai, it's in Yongjialu. And then from day one, so we started pressing juices, but with the highest quality. Even it's in the 30 square meter store. We built a 10 square meter walk-in cooler. So the result of that is our green juice, even though it doesn't look that appetizing, it's delicious. We want to make sure, this product is so delicious and so effective, so our customers will come back to us and really change their lifestyle. So that's our original idea and how we started from zero. So fast forward 14 years later, now we have 400 mu, which is 270,000 square meter of production campus in Shanghai, Anhui, and Hebei, 3 different campus sites. And then, so it's different. It's 9,000 times bigger than before. Yeah, and then today you can find our products in Costco, in Hema, even in Hangzhou here, you can find the juices in the Four Seasons Hotel. And then very soon in Hong Kong too, in 2 weeks' time. So in May. So this is my little journey from a girl in Shanghai to working in finance, and then coming back here and started a lifestyle brand.
Circling back to your process and your journey in creating VCleanse, do you think it was difficult in the very beginning? And what would you say would be your biggest challenge when creating VCleanse?
So I guess the biggest challenge is really, you have to learn a lot of things, and then you have to make a lot of decisions. Let me put it more abstractly, is you will encounter so many difficulties. For example, in the very beginning, for a juice cleanse, we use cold press, but we don't have a shelf life. But there were no non-heat processing in China at the moment. So we almost closed our business. It was very challenging. And then we kept looking and looking. We never compromised our standards. So we kept looking and looking. Eventually, we found a lab machine. That's HPP, so it's high pressure processing instead of high heat processing. It was very difficult, but we were able to make China's first HPP juice. So here, another thing is, in Chinese, in entrepreneurship, we say 先完整再完美. So first complete, then perfection.
Yeah.
So at least, we have something that's passable, we can start selling. Then gradually, we rented a bigger workshop in somebody else's factory. And later, we rented a bigger space in somebody else's factory again. And later, that person left, so we took over the whole factory. So this is how the journey started. so many challenges. Even like today, I mean, at different stages, you have different challenges. Like today, the challenge is still like, I'm sure you've heard of this word, 内卷. So because AI, because internet, it's really hard to keep anything proprietary. Like your technology, your formulation, your ideas, people can copy it right away. And then people like to do it cheaper. So like, 内卷, right? So how do you deal with that? I mean, we started a lot of products. That's we're the first creation, but then there's always somebody else, try to imitate you. But I think, imitation is the best form of compliment. But I think the challenge to us is how do we stay ahead, really convince them, the money you pay is worth it.
That makes sense.
Speaking of guild-based marketing, I don't think we ever do guild-based. I think it's in our company DNA. We want you to be a better person, to inspire the best out of you, as opposed to make you feel bad. I think that's our company culture. And then for a marketing message, of course, because we're in the food and beverage industry, we have a lot of restrictions in terms of what functionality we can discuss and cannot discuss. And to be honest, it's ultimately a beverage. It's still a juice. It's not like a medicine. So we don't really talk too much about benefits or function. But the idea is really, if you have a healthy lifestyle, you will feel better. And then, so I think we really geared more towards the better, as opposed to guilt. And I think this is also a lot to do with founders' personality. I think this is how we look at marketing in general.
Do you think your marketing strategies differ to maybe the marketing strategies of your competitors? Do you see any effects with those different types of strategies?
I think we're definitely more long-term. We like to have organic traction as opposed to, you acquire a bunch of influencers, then have them write reviews. I think it just seems we're more low-key and we're more slow. We really believe in genuine and organic growth rather than acquired. That's just not sustainable.
So obviously the message of VCleanse is one of your top priorities would be health, right? What does being healthy mean to you as a person?
That's a really good question. I think being healthy to me is, in Chinese, would be 身心灵. So it's your physical body, your mental health, and your spirituality. There's another term in Chinese, it's called 本自具足. Just be very content with what you have. And in yoga, also I practice yoga, yama niyama. The first one is ahimsa. In yoga, the first thing is yama is things you're not supposed to do. And then the first thing is ahimsa is nonviolence. Ultimately, is compassionate towards all beings, everything. To me, that's the true health. Every day, if you live true compassionate towards others, generally we'll find universe will move at a better rhythm. I think so. I think to me that means to be healthy is compassionate towards others.
So it's more than just something physical, and it's also mental. It's like a mental state, and it's an emotional state.
I think physical is very important. It's super important, physical. I think it's the foundation, it's the base. But I think mental and spiritually, to me, is something that's higher than what you can see with your naked eye. Because there's so many things we don't understand yet in this physical world. I think just surrender to that power. Yeah.
Something else I wanted to ask was,
Sure.
You mentioned just now that you also practice yoga. So how does this connect with VCleanse as a brand?
Yeah, because for us, I think we're selling a lifestyle. It's never just about the juice, but what this juice represents. We want this to be a symbol of healthy lifestyle. One of our first events was actually with Lululemon at the time in 2013. That was their first community event in China. That was done together with us in the Surpass courtyard.
So you partnered with Lululemon. As a company, how do you guys establish brands that you authentically want to work with and values actually match yours versus just...
Yeah. I think that's a really good question. I mean, on brand is so important. As a brand builder, I always talked about you have to do everything that's on brand. Then you have to be authentically aligned in terms of your visions. It's really hard to do it in an authentic way. At the time, I think it was, Lululemon, Chip Wilson was still around. And then it was very interesting. I think that at the time, the company was on the rise. And I was so inspired by their vision. Their mission is not to sell you one more pair of yoga leggings, but they want to unleash your potential power through Sweat Life. So I thought, wow, that's so interesting. And then I think the true art of selling something is not to sell the physical product, but sell what it means behind, what represents behind, and then attracts your true clients and clientele. I think the pitfall for a lot of entrepreneurs is people are in a rush. You want to be like a billionaire overnight, then you start selling hard. But the harder you sell, the less you sell. Brand building takes time, but the most important thing is to stick to what you truly believe in.
So I also know that you're a Lululemon ambassador. So why don't you tell us the story of how that happened?
Yeah, that's a good question because we were very active in the community building process. At the time for ambassadors, they have a category that's entrepreneurs in the healthy lifestyle business and active in the community. So even though I was not a full-time fitness teacher, I was not practicing yoga professionally at the time. But I was still invited to be a community ambassador. I was ambassador for Shanghai's HKRI Taikoo store. It was a very good experience. And now I am practicing yoga at a professional level, also thanks to the time my store manager at Taikoo.
So how was your life living in Shanghai?
So I was born in 1983. Yeah, I grew up when China was still really poor. I guess we just came out of Cultural Revolution at the time. I still remember everybody, you have different quotes,
the quotas.
The quotas, yeah, everybody has different quotas for everything. And Western lifestyle was very much desired, like Coca-Cola and things there. I just still remember when I first had my first bag of M&Ms. I was like, this is so good. Yeah, and it was very difficult. And study was the only way out because you have to do Gaokao, everybody, right? And then I had no ambition of going to Harvard at that time. I had no idea even where to begin with. I had no overseas connections. I just studied really hard. So I remember starting from grade 3, I would, at night after I finished homework, I would study, prepare materials for next semester. At first it was next month. Then later I started reading books for next semester, then for next grade. So I remember by the end of junior high, I've already completed the whole high school. I can take Gaokao basically at the time of Chusan. Later in my teenage years, China got richer, started opening and reform, and then we had so much desire for Western lifestyle, I remember. And then I was able to go to Hong Kong on a scholarship first. That was my first trip outside mainland. And then later I won a speech competition. Then I won a scholarship to go to America for a month. That was in my Gao'er, 11th grade. And then I made friends on the trip too who also lived in Shanghai but had overseas connections. They always wanted to go abroad to study. So they told me about SAT. I never even heard of SAT before. And then they asked me to, at the time, bring back a book called 10 Real SATs, which is a preparation material. There are like 10 real SAT tests in the book. And then I brought the book back and they were just like, why don't we share the book? So we photocopied the book, the three of us. And I just remember, and then one of them was like, oh, I know how to sign up for SAT. So he went to Shanghai American School and then asked for the Shanghai American School test center code. Because that information, we didn't have internet at the time. That information is only available if you go out to Shanghai American School and ask for it. He took the bus to Qingpu. It took him 2 hours. And then he asked them, like, how do I take SAT? And it was the test center code. So he got the test center code and shared with us. We mailed the registration forms. At the time, it was mail to America. And then we got registered to take SAT. I only got 2 months to prepare because I decided to apply in end of September. And then my SAT test was in December, so only 2 months. And then I no former, like training in the vocabulary or writing, whatever.
Yeah.
So I just remember went to SAS, Shanghai American School, to take SAT. I mean, we're local kids. We look and behave so different from the students at the school. Yeah, and very luckily, my score was 1510, so it was good enough to apply to all the schools. So I decided to apply. And then I didn't want to go apply to Harvard because it was such a, like a long shot. And that was my last application I threw in. And then I was interviewed. My interview was a really memorable experience. So I got a call, so Harvard wanted to interview you. At the time, my interviewer, his name is Bo Shao. The time he was very famous in Shanghai. He just finished Harvard Business School. He also went to Harvard College. He went there, he graduated in 1995 with summa cum laude in math and physics. He was brilliant. He also applied directly from Shanghai, like me. I have no idea how he got it, even 10 years earlier than me. And then he also went to Harvard HBS, and then he was working at this high-powered job, and then he decided to start his own business, and he started an e-commerce site called EachNet. And then, so I met him when he was doing EachNet, and everybody heard about him. And I would just remember, I was so impressed by him. He was so young, so handsome. I remember he was so compassionate. Listen to my life story. And I felt so relaxed. I never felt this relaxed in my life with anyone. So I shared my life story with him. And then I got into Harvard. I just remember I told myself, if I get into Harvard, I definitely would go. I don't want to be somebody like bow later. Yeah, so later he sold each net to eBay for $200 million or something like that 2 years later. At the time, it's like the most successful startup story of that generation. Yeah. So this is a little bit story.
So how were you able to go to Harvard eventually?
Here, so Harvard is need blind admission. So as long as you get in, admission office will figure out how to pay for your education, however much money you needed. So I got a full scholarship, but I have no idea who donated the money. But I just know, I have a full scholarship, pays for room and board. I have a little bit pocket money every month, and I can even apply for a winter coat fund because Boston is so cold. I'm from a warm area, so I remember I got $700 or something to buy winter coat and boots. And then they even have scholarships for tutors. I needed some help with my writing because I never done this type of expository writing in China. Not even in Chinese, right? This style of writing. So I got a writing tutor to help me with my expository writing class. I even got an English tutor to help me with my communication, to really talk like an American, because I went to a local high school. I never even started speaking English. I mean, I did in exams. So it was very generous. But then the most important thing was my scholarship. Later, I learned the scholarship. So in my sophomore year, I remember I got a call from the financial aid office. So your donor is here. So she is here for a philanthropy conference. She would like to meet you. And I met with Rosalind Kuhl. So she told me, she was in her late 70s at the time. She told me the scholarship was established by her brother, whose name is George Chen. George also went to Harvard College and Harvard Business School. He actually graduated from Harvard College at the age of 18. And their family has a tradition of going to Harvard. Her father also went to Harvard Business School and was one of the founding members of Bank of China. And I think George later made money. And then Roz is like, I think you should do something good with your money. Then they established the scholarship at Harvard under the name of their mother. Then preferences are given to girls from Shanghai, Zhejiang, and Sichuan provinces. And I was very lucky to be one of the recipients of the scholarship. And all these years, later, Roz and I became good friends. At the time, she lived in a retirement home outside San Francisco. So she invited me over during my summer holidays. So I stayed with her. And then, so we would speak Shanghainese together. So she went to the famous McTeary School, which is where the Song sisters went. And today, it is Shisan Yuzhong in Shanghai. It's a very nice school. And she's such a big philanthropist. She would share with me her project. She sponsored 1,000 girls from rural areas in China. She worked with Women's Federation, Fulian, so directly. So she raised money for 1,000 girls to go from elementary school to middle school to high school to college to grad school if they get into. So she changed the life, not only my life, but 1,000 Chinese girls' life. Yeah, that's just one of her many philanthropy projects. She also helps with the San Francisco Chinese immigrant, the underprivileged low-income Chinese immigrant, the senior living. So she raised $20 million to build a building just for them. But unfortunately, she passed away during COVID time. We didn't get a chance to say goodbye to her. So just last month, we went to San Francisco again, met with her daughter. Her daughter's name is Debbie. She also went to Harvard Business School. Was a very successful female business leader too. And we share with her, so my husband and I wanted to continue the tradition. So we also established an endowment at my husband's school, Lehigh, in memory of Rosalind Kuhl. That particular fund allows Lehigh students to travel and do projects abroad to see the world. Just like how Roz, the time, because of her, I can go to see the world. Yeah.
Final question for you. What's the best thing about being a female entrepreneur?
I think there are two things. What's the best thing about being an entrepreneur? And how is it different from being a female entrepreneur? I think definitely being an entrepreneur in general is the freedom. Because you have the freedom to do whatever you truly believe in and fully express your value systems through your effort. And every single minute, every single second, whatever you do is dedicated towards creating your own vision. That's a true liberating sense. It's great. I highly encourage anybody, if you have the resources or you have a dream to be an entrepreneur, definitely be an entrepreneur. Being a female entrepreneur, to be honest, I never thought of my gender role that specifically because I guess, I grew up in the current China, the female, everybody's mom works. I feel like in this society, female is very strong, even stronger. I also think, Yeah, I think to me it's a growing process. Because when I first started being an entrepreneur, I was in my late 20s, going to my 30s. Now I'm in my early 40s. Through the course of 14 years, I've grown from a girl to a more confident woman. And I think to me is a true maturing process that like I can do it on my own. I don't need to rely on anybody else's. And the sense that I truly realized, I think it goes back to Diamond Sutra, 金刚经. It says basically, it really says you have to see through the truth of things. You really have to understand your core. Once you get that, I think you're fearless. Then you have your own core power. You have your own strength. You don't have to rely on anybody else. You've grown to be like a true human, and then you are grounded. Like what is the one thing you're the best in the world at? Then you don't need anybody else's, I don't know, like validation or favor. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Thank you so much for being on this podcast with me today.
oh, thank you for inviting me.
And most importantly, thank you to you guys for watching today's episode. This is your host, Kira Lai, and this was the Afterthought podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow along for more episodes just like this.